Our product marketing team was putting together all this messaging docs, but then it was kind of like always evolving. And then like our social and our content team would be waiting, or they'd be making something, and then it was old messaging. Our sales team, they didn't know like a launch was coming out. And so all of a sudden they'd be like, I didn't even know this product was happening. And all of a sudden I saw it on LinkedIn. So there was just like a lot of miscommunication that was happening. And when I came in to kind of take ownership of that, I realized that a lot of the things that are causing friction and causing delays and slowing things down is just kind of this miscommunication. So a big step of my launch process is just like setting up clear communications across all key stakeholders. Usually when we have a new launch, I'll bring in, key stakeholders from each department and kind of say like, hey, here's like the goal, here's the launch date, have the product marketing team share our positioning, and then it'll be like, okay, go with your teams, put your plan together, and then come back a week later and you're going to present it to all of us. We're all going to talk as a group, get aligned on everything.
Hello and welcome to Best Story Wins. I'm your host, Josh, and I'm here with my co-host, Jason. And today our guest is Nicole Gates, who's the VP of Growth Marketing at Varonis. Hey, Nicole. Thanks for joining us today. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Great. Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we get started here, I'd love for you to get us started with a bit of your backstory. And if you could also share a little bit about how you ended up at Varonis, that'd be awesome. And then as sort of a follow-up to that, is there anything that you, as you got started in the role, I know growth roles can kind of vary from company to company, but were there any like early wins or challenges that shaped your focus and how you look at your work?
Yeah, I mean, I've been at Varonis now for about 3 years. I joined as their first demand gen hire. So I kind of came in where they were like, look, we know we need demand gen, but we're not really sure like what that looks like, how to build it, where to start. They started with some things like we're doing some experiments with paid advertising and had a strong digital foundation. But I kind of came in and started laying the foundation for that. So that was kind of my first challenge, was just kind of like, what does the demand gen engine look like for, this cybersecurity company? And so, a lot of what I worked on was very foundational stuff. I was building out the pipeline, figuring out our attribution models, figuring out, our KPIs and how marketing is going to decide what's successful and how we align with sales, and then starting to build some of those campaigns. So it was very foundational, which is interesting, like a lot of people think you come into, a large public company and they've kind of got everything already sorted. But a reason why I did join Varonis was I come from more of a startup background. And so this is probably the largest company I've ever worked for. And I was a little hesitant to kind of come in because I'm always worried about, a lot of red tape, a lot of processes. I like to move pretty fast. But what drew me to Varonis and our CMO, Rob Sobers, was that it's kind of got the feeling of a startup within the marketing space. So they're building a lot of stuff. There's a lot of opportunity to kind of like make your mark. And that's kind of what sold me on that. And so that's what I've done since I've been there for 3 years. I started as director of demand gen, and now I'm VP of growth marketing, whatever that kind of means. But it's mainly because I've kind of accumulated quite a few teams and responsibilities, and I've kind of grown out like what growth marketing looks like at Varonis. And so it made sense to kind of shift the title away from just demand gen into growth, because it kind of, my scope kind of widened beyond just demand gen campaigns.
When you stepped into growth, what was the problem statement you were focused on solving? Like what were you trying to change about how security buyers discover and choose your company?
Yeah, Varonis was in a really great growth stage. And so the biggest challenge for our whole entire marketing team was kind of changing perception about what Varonis was. There was kind of this outdated perception of Varonis. They thought it was just kind of file sharing, only on-prem security. And since I've joined over the last 3 years, we've been, we switched our platform over to SaaS. We've expanded into new markets. We're really kind of like evolving and innovating what data security looks like. And so it was kind of like, okay, not only do we have to get pipeline, drive revenue, our CEO has very aggressive growth goals for the company all the time. So you still had that, but at the same time, it was also kind of, growing awareness about like this new Varonis. So it was an interesting kind of piece when it came to growth marketing, because a lot of people kind of just look at it as like pipeline driven, just get the revenue numbers in. But we realized that there was kind of this more this brand awareness play almost that needed to also happen that would also help with that growth. So it's kind of what I like about growth marketing is I feel like it shifts and it evolves depending on the company and the needs. And, it keeps me on my toes and my job never looks the same year to year. I'm always kind of getting involved into different tactics and different things in the marketing side. And I think like for anybody who's interested in growth marketing, like just something to be expected. Like no one company has the same definition of what a growth marketer does.
So we talked a little bit last week about process and how you all kind of align around various initiatives. And I'm curious if you can sort of paint the picture for us for what it looks like and what your launch machine, if you will, looks like from idea to pipeline. Like what are the steps in the process and what parts of working your way are essentially like non-negotiable?
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of known as like the process person at work, which is probably like the least interesting title or thing to be told, or sorry, that's probably the least interesting thing to be called. But honestly, I do feel like, putting in a good process can really help scale and grow a company. And so when we first were kind of coming into launches, there was a lot of like disjointed moving parts. Our product marketing team was putting together all this messaging docs, but then it was kind of like always evolving. And then like our social and our content team would be waiting or they'd be making something. And then it was old messaging. Our sales team, they didn't know like a launch was coming out. And so all of a sudden they'd be like, I didn't even know this product was happening. And all of a sudden I saw it on LinkedIn. So there's just like a lot of miscommunication that was happening. And when I came in to kind of take ownership of that, I realized that a lot of the things that are causing friction and causing delays and slowing things down is just kind of this miscommunication. So a big step of my launch process is just like setting up clear communications across all key stakeholders. Usually when we have a new launch, I'll bring in, key stakeholders from each department and kind of say like, hey, here's like the goal, here's the launch date, here's, I'll have the product marketing team share our positioning, and it'll be like, okay, go with your teams, put your plan together, and then come back a week later and you're going to present it to all of us. And we're all going to talk as a group, get aligned on everything. And then I have weekly stand-ups, usually like we have an Asana board and all of that stuff. But the weekly stand-ups is kind of the best way to kind of work through blockers or problems or identifying if things shift. And then also just really clear communication with sales. We've had a really great improvement with like working with our sales enablement team and having our sales enablement team really like be prepping the sales team ahead of a launch and working closely with sales enablement so that messaging is clear. It's aligned with what's going to come out with marketing. And then we'll usually do a kickoff call with sales to kind of say, here, this is the launch that's coming up. Here's the assets you'll have, and here's what to expect. So they kind of anticipate dates and everything. I actually just did that this morning for a launch we're doing next week. So yeah, a lot of it's just like over communication and oversharing kind of everything that's going on. And that's really seen a lot of improvement where I feel like we can still move fast, we can still be agile, but people aren't like reiterating 20 different blogs the last week or something right before a launch.
And with regard to the prioritization, when you have a sometimes crowded roadmap, how do you rank and prioritize those launches, and what's an example of like circumstances that would make something jump ahead in line?
Yeah, lots of negotiation. We had a lot of launches this year. It's definitely been a year of change for Varonis. So I think I had about 10 product launches that we had to manage. And that doesn't even include like kind of smaller, integrations and stuff. So it was definitely a negotiation with like product marketing, sales, and then also, C-suite even of like, what are like those core products that we really need to like get to market. And how I approach it is usually a tiering system. I love a tiering system. And the tiering system kind of evolves. Like when we first came in, we were like, okay, anything that, you need a lot of marketing power behind, you need to like have a lot of oomph. We really think this is going to like, drive a lot of sales. Like we need to put that's tier 1. Where if it's like, a little like just a quick announcement or we fixed a bug, like that doesn't need all of that. So that's tier 3. But while I've been in this year kind of doing all these launches, I realized that kind of needs to shift. And so now how we kind of approach the tiering system is that a tier one is something that's like market changing or huge to our customers. So, recently we're kind of moving into new markets. So we did data access management. So like that's something, completely new that we really need people to know we're doing. Another one is email security, huge different shift for our company. So like that is getting like full blown marketing power behind it. And then a tier two is something where it's like, it's useful for a certain segment of people. So we have lots of different kind of segments that we go after. We have like our Salesforce offering, which is slightly different than kind of our core group of, data security professionals. And so like if we launch something around Salesforce, we might consider that more of a tier two. And so like, it's got a slightly different, focus and resources behind it. And then tier three is things like, customer requests, integrations, things that are still important, things that are still going to like, help sales close deals, but it might not need like, a promo video and a big effort behind marketing. So we've kind of shifted our tiering and prioritization to like, how does it matter to the customer versus like, how does it matter to our internal teams? And I think that's been a better shift of how to approach tiering.
You talked a little bit about collaborating with sales and sales enablement. In terms of like getting launches to stick, and getting the alignment between the various teams, like what do sales and product and CS need from you and your team in order for a launch to be successful?
Yeah, I think the clear communication and expectations. I think the trainings have been huge with sales enablement. Our sales enablement team's been doing a bunch of trainings for this launch we have coming up shortly. I think that's been, instrumental in just getting everybody really aligned on like how to sell it, how to talk about it, what to anticipate around it, and then being really clear about like what assets will be available for sales, getting those really core assets, like pitch decks, battle cards, data sheets, also marketing collateral that they can use. So I think that's the best part for, kicking things off. But I think the next piece is getting that feedback back from sales and, customer success, just because we do all this work where we're like, this is the positioning, this is the messaging, this is what people really going to resonate. This sounds really great, but you never really know until it's in market and the sales team is having those conversations. And so I always see it as like launch, and you have, all these activities where you push it out and you kind of are testing and you're seeing, and then you have a reiteration where you're getting that feedback. You're seeing, is this successful? Is this not? Is it converting? What are the pain points or things that are, pushing people forward in the deal? And then tweaking, those campaigns and that launch. So I usually have a few demand gen campaigns and like paid advertising and email kind of campaigns in the works, but I'll usually see that as like a phase two where I'm like, okay, let's kind of see how the initial push goes, get the feedback, and then we're going to tweak based on that feedback. So I think like letting them know that we're not going to just keep hammering home the same messaging that's not working and is not like converting deals, that they can provide feedback and can help shape what that marketing campaign looks like, makes them feel like they're more partners with the launch and are more able to like, or ready, I should say, to kind of make it stick and carry forward with it.
That's awesome. And how do you think about allocating your budget across demand gen, product marketing, thought leadership? Are there any trade-offs you've learned from by accidentally over-investing in one area versus another?
Oh yeah, all the time. I feel like my mind changes on budget all the time. It's kind of like what's working and what's not. Like our paid social was working really, really well, converting, into not only leads but deals really, really easily. And so we were just putting tons of money towards that, and we've seen that kind of taper off. And an area where I've, historically not seen a lot of success before I came into Varonis was like content syndication. I was like, you're just buying leads, it doesn't really work. They don't convert. It's just vanity metrics. And actually, I was proven wrong where my one demand gen manager kind of was like, hey, I really want to do this content syndication experiment. And it worked really well. And now we're kind of shifting where we're investing more in that channel. But even this year, as some of these like more paid to play type channels like paid social, content syndication are kind of like, wearing down, I'm investing a lot more in thought leadership, and kind of, again, those like brand plays, I guess, a little bit more, because I've definitely been seeing a shift just in the market, I think with AI, as everyone knows, has kind of made the market a lot noisier, and there's a lot more junk out there. And so kind of investing in other people who are respected in your industry talking about your product and your business usually kind of just hits better, I think, because it feels more authentic. It's not some, AI slop email that's coming your way. And we're seeing a lot of success where people just think that, if there's more word of mouth, even if you're paying for that thought leader to talk about you, it just kind of like does something to your kind of like psyche, I think, where you're just like, oh, I'm seeing, Varonis here, here, and here. This podcast that I really, look at and really appreciate this person's like point of view on the market is talking about them all the time or commenting on their, social posts. Like, I think it's a nice way to kind of convert people and get people interested in a company. So I've been definitely shifting a lot more budget towards thought leadership, which is hard to prove ROI. So it's all, as the growth and demand gen person, I do always have to come back to that number. But there are like metrics like direct traffic increase or direct demo requests that are coming through. I kind of see those as like, that means brand is improving and people just know our name and are just coming straight to our website and submitting demos.
What about on the flip side? So you've been there for a few years now. Have there been any GTM motions that have just totally flopped? If so, what did you learn about that experience, and has that lesson, if there was one, changed how you approach motions moving forward?
Yeah, there's definitely been a few. One that was stand out to me, kind of tied into that communication with sales again. So we had this big push for, this new product that we were doing, and, everything was aligned and we announced it and sales had no idea. Like, sales didn't know what it was. They didn't even know it was coming. We didn't really have alignment with even product on, implementation of it. So like, we were getting all of these demo requests because, our marketing did really well. So that was great. People were very interested in it. But then it come over to sales and sales didn't know how to talk about it. They didn't know what the offer was. They didn't know what marketing we were doing around it. And so they kind of like, it wasn't their fault, but like they didn't know how to kind of carry it forward. And so also we saw this really deep like decrease in conversion rates. And so that was definitely a learning point where I was like, okay, we need to build in sales enablement, work with the sales enablement team on this, improve communication with sales and product too, just making sure that what we're told is like what we're marketing can also happen when it comes to like the implementation side of it, and just make sure like all those pieces are aligned and we're not just like, oh, we're ready to, announce this new feature, like go marketing and just kind of like blinders on, go forward.
Nicole, where do you draw the line between AI in brand messaging and AI where it changes outcomes? And is there any example where you've pulled AI language back a bit because it wasn't actually helping buyers make a decision?
This year, I feel like definitely where if you weren't talking about your product being AI powered, generated, native, what have you, you were kind of out of the loop because people were kind of looking for AI solutions. And so I feel like at first you kind of had to come in and be like, AI driven data security. Like, you had to show that it was in there just so people knew you were using AI. But then I was, as any term, gets overdone. And I think I was actually at our cybersecurity conference at RSA in San Francisco, and I was taking my Uber down to the conference, and every single billboard was AI powered, blah, blah, blah. Every single one, everything was about AI. And I was just like, all right, like, AI is not the differentiator anymore. I think at this point, if you're not doing AI, like, you're behind. And so how we shifted it where, there's still a balance where we have, certain stakeholders who really want to drive home that AI, messaging and make sure it's front and center. But I did shift it to where it's like, how is our AI the differentiator versus we are just AI powered data security? And one of our biggest differentiators is that we don't just like find, problems with your data security. We also use our AI to fix it and to learn better and to, to be better protected. So we'll like take learnings from, other threats or breaches that have happened, learn from it, and then we can use our AI to kind of protect other companies from like these more modern hacks and threats that are happening. And so we used our AI story and our messaging more on those outcomes and that differentiator versus just saying a blanketed like AI powered data security. We were like, no, our AI, like it's, I think our CEO likes to say robots fighting robots. Hackers are using AI to like make more threats. And so we're using AI to be smarter at protecting and defending against those threats and learning off of those threats as they evolve. So that's kind of the shift we've done. I still think, AI language won't go away for a little while. But I think having that shift helped make it more purposeful about like how we use our AI and how it's different than just like blanketing throwing AI into our title and calling it a day.
It's kind of a tricky one, right? Because it's like I think people that understand brand and marketing, generally speaking, like they know that doing the AI powered thing is like that's like product marketing, and they're trying to like force it into brand messaging, and it's just I think everyone kind of knows like, oh, this goes against best practices, but like maybe we'll do it anyways. And then I think they fall into the trap that the whole industry has fallen into, which is like when everyone does it, it doesn't really add any value when you do it too.
Yeah, I'm at least happy that, we actually do it is real AI. I worked at previous companies that we used to say that they're, AI powered something. And I'm like, it's only, if then statements, that's not AI. So it's easier to kind of put AI into your marketing messaging when you actually are like, no, it's true, like AI solutions. And it's not just like us trying to pretend that this is AI because everybody else is doing it. So that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. What about in terms of how you all use AI in your creative and marketing workflows? Like, can you speak to how that's showing up and how your team is leveraging tech for kind of your day to day?
Yeah, we actually have an AI tiger team in our marketing team. They're like a little subset that are out to kind of experiment and see new ways we could be using AI, but also training the rest of us on it. So our whole company got Copilot with Microsoft, and so our first kind of iteration of that was like how you can use Copilot to like speed up your day, help build, PowerPoints and landing pages and some of the marketing collateral. You have wins and losses when it comes to that. We had to, obviously train Copilot on our brand voice and stuff, and our AI Tiger team did that. So then we have, like now a little like Varonis brand bot that kind of helps where if you're like, you have an email that you just need to shoot out, or anybody can kind of go in and make sure it's within our brand voice. Obviously, though, we teach everybody like read, tweak, and edit whatever it spits out. Don't just copy paste it because you're like, oh, I'm using AI, and using AI as a big pillar of the marketing team right now. Like, please edit it. It's never perfect when it comes out. So we have that, but then we were just talking about like what our marketing values are and what we kind of want to instill into the rest of the marketing team moving into 2026. And one of them is like, be intentional with AI, use AI, see how you can use AI, like experiment. And so some of the ways is obviously like how we can work faster. But for me, with the demand gen growth side of it, it's a lot around like lead quality, routing, identification, maybe identifying like anonymous visitors. Like it's kind of the back end, more marketing operations piece that I'm interested in is like, how can I like identify leads, enrich them faster, and like route them to the right people, and like maybe even nurture them. I've been experimenting with like AI SDR kind of outreach or, enrichment. My director of marketing operations is looking at Clay and like how we can bring in all these kind of intent signals and do a lot of the manual, like get rid of a lot of that manual work or pieces within our funnel that's just like really not well optimized. So for me, that's what I'm most excited about is just like, how can we kind of have that speed to lead kind of AI automation versus like only using it to produce more content. We're looking into that, but I always worried about like the AI slop, like I don't want to just put out trash. Like I really want to we really pride ourselves on having really good content, really good videos, really high quality stuff for our market. Tech people, CISOs in particular, really hate marketing. And if it comes off or smells like marketing, like they can sense it from a mile away. And so like we've really put a lot of effort in making sure it's high quality content. And I wouldn't want to like put that onto AI. I'd rather be like, what are the other things for my content team, my creative team that's weighing them down so that they can focus on the stuff that I think is like high value for them to be focusing on.
Yeah, you touched on CISOs. I'm curious how you all approach the various creating content for the various people that you're trying to reach. I know with a highly technical product, sometimes it can be challenging, especially if there's a buying committee at the companies you're selling to. So, um, with respect to your product, and potentially with respect also to some of the newer AI features, like, can you walk us through how you talk to like the hands-on security people that are doing the work day in day out, and then the other people that are responsible for making decisions on behalf of the company, and how that kind of varies from person to person?
Yeah, it definitely varies. I think the word that we try to keep consistent across both of those personas is just like authenticity. I think if you try to connect with them authentically, however that kind of looks, they appreciate it. So, with the technical people, like you never want to talk like you're, for marketers, like if you're like SEO is search engine optimization, like you never want to start a blog with that. Like we already know, I already am like, I discrediting you as like a marketing person. But if you're coming in with like, ideas and thoughts for, if you're targeting me as a growth marketer and it's like, oh, this is innovative, or oh, I could think about that, or that's really interesting take on that. Like kind of having that same idea for, the technical people. Like don't talk down to them, speak at their level, be thought leadershipy where you're kind of saying like, here's, what hackers are doing. Here's some threat research that we're seeing. Even just ways to engage where it's like funny, where it's just like, here, I understand what your life is like, and I'm here to help it. Like, I think that's like key. And I think that's the same too with CISOs. Like the content's slightly different, maybe it's more about like how to prove to the board that you're actually protecting, your data. And like, we can help you with that. How can we like make your life easier so you don't have to hire like 200 security professionals because we can help automate that. Like it is slightly different, but ultimately it's just like kind of engaging with them in an authentic way and showing that you really understand like who they are and their problems and not talking down to them or trying to be too cutesy with your marketing really helps.
Wow, you nailed it. I love how you think about that. On the revenue front and thinking about this world of attribution and even the sometimes tall order of making sure you're generating the right kind of revenue, and really getting into that ICP properly. What are some of the leading indicators that you really trust or metrics that you value? Is it, your win rate in AI use cases or certain segments, or, certain proof of value activations, or how do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, my North Star is always going to be like sales qualified pipeline. So, that's kind of my North Star metric. If those are going down, like everything else, I kind of have to figure out. So that's been the best for me, just to really show that I'm like a partner with sales, that I'm not going to just throw leads over the wall and be like, here you go, have fun. I really, really care that I'm sending them really high intent leads, and I want them to be excited about, oh, I got a marketing lead. I need to jump on this because these convert way faster and easier than anything else. So that's kind of like my ultimate goal as like a growth marketer, is to get sales excited about anything I send their way. We just recently worked on revamping like what our MQL process looks like and handing it over to our SDRs. I actually implemented, like an SLA for our SDRs on like what to do with MQLs. And mainly it's because I'm like, I'm going to be really on top of like what I consider an MQL, but I need your guys' feedback. So I need you to follow up in 24 hours and either like disqualify them, recycle them, or convert them into an opportunity, because then it'll give me better insight into like the quality of what I'm sending. Do I need to be sending you more? Are they the right type of people? Are they, complete junk? And, what I think is doing really well actually isn't doing really well. So that's been nice because it is a much quicker leading indicator that I can work off of, while, it can take 3 to 6 months for an opportunity to kind of go into a sales qualified opportunity. So sometimes you think like a campaign's working really well because you're like, oh, it's got all these leads and it's got all these SQLs and, sales are talking to them and they have meetings set up. And then you find out that it's like complete junk, or it was the wrong person, or, none of it converted into revenue. And so really focusing on some of this MQL to SDR handover, I think will really help give us a little bit more leading indicators for a long sales cycle. So those are kind of the two things that I'm thinking about right now. But still, at the end of the day, it's like revenue. If we miss revenue, if we miss opportunities, if my SDR team doesn't have enough, pipeline to work off of, like I need to fix that first before I'm kind of looking at, leads and MQLs.
And I know every tech company does it slightly differently, but how do your do they sit within the marketing org, it sounds like?
They just shifted to being under the marketing org this year. They used to be under sales, and now our head of SDRs reports to our CMO.
How's that shift worked out so far, and what were some of the reasons for that change?
I think some of the reasons was just to have better visibility into like what the SDRs are doing and really improve like that marketing to sales handoff. And I think it's been really good because I have better visibility and collaboration, I think, with, the SDR team, because I can be like, hey, let's work on these cadences, or, what's kind of feedback of like what you need from a campaign standpoint, where before, because they had different goals and objectives for, they still have their goals and objectives with their sales regions and everything, but like they would kind of just like not brush us off, but they're like, this isn't my priority. I need to like go through my call list. I've got to follow up with these leads, or I'm going to get like pinged for, I'm not going to make as much commission because I'm not following these certain rules. So since we shifted and kind of like reprioritized what we think is important for them, it's helped give me more visibility and collaboration with the SDR team. And I think it's converting a lot better. I think we had like, I don't want to say a percentage because in case it's wrong, but a really high percentage increase in like, enterprise deal conversions into opportunities just from that kind of shift and reprioritization. And so now like, I feel like I can work much closer with like our SDR leaders and come up with strategies of like, what are best practices for you guys? How can I help from a marketing standpoint? Where can I come in and maybe build like a automated nurture sequence to kind of get things off your plate so you can focus on, the high quality stuff? And then, or where is there things where maybe we're being too precious about what we send over to you and you're like, no, I want to, work these leads, like send me them over. And so like the feedback loop's been a lot better.
That's awesome. That's really helpful, I'm sure, for a lot of people to hear about that. I know it can sometimes go back and forth. And
yeah, I've worked in it both.
I like the responsibility you take for the lead quality and like the opportunities that I'm sure the sales team loves that.
Yeah, I have I feel like I argue or discuss attribution way too much sometimes, but I have some sales leaders who are just like, just send me everything. I just want sales to just give me lead list, I just want net new and I'll work on it. And I always kind of push back because I'm just like, you're never going to work through, if I buy a lead list from an event, like 200 leads, like you're going to just waste your time. Like I'd rather marketing be aligned with like your revenue and be a partner with you on those deals. And like, I have just as much skin in the game of like what's coming over to you as you do. Because otherwise, like I could just be fluff and be like, oh, well, I got you, 3,000 MQLs this quarter. Like I did my job. Good job, me. And then leave you to the wolves of like, well, revenue's down 30% and we're not going to hit our Q4 goals. Like what else can we do? And I'm like, well, I did everything that I needed to do. So good luck, sales.
Right.
I like to feel like they know I'm partnering with them and I own that revenue goal as much as they do. Well, not as much, but I care about it.
That's awesome.
I'm curious, now that we're talking about like sales and marketing collaboration and feedback loop, like, do you ever get like just crazy requests from sales saying like, hey, you guys should do this? And if so, like, how do you navigate, either like making those ideas something that will actually work, or helping them to understand like, hey, that's probably not going to work and it's not practical, or it's a bad idea?
Yeah, all the time. We have a pretty large sales organization with, some pretty strong personalities. So we get a lot of ideas thrown our way. Our field team, I'll say, probably gets the brunt of it. So I'm lucky where there's a little bit of, a barrier. I'll still get some ideas where people will be like, oh, have we ever thought of, getting on Google before? I'm like, yeah, we're doing that. Or they'll be like, oh, we should do a billboard next to my hometown because, I've got one CISO that's over there. And I'm like, well, that billboard costs $20,000. Like, is that worth that? I think it's just about knowing where to be, you always want them to feel like they can come and give you ideas. Like I'm always welcome to new ideas. People might see something that a competitor is doing or someone else is doing, and you never know where a new idea is going to strike. But also knowing like where to be flexible and where to kind of put your foot down. Especially when it comes to certain regions, like they are living and dying by that region. And so like if they're just like, things are dry. I need more action. I don't know what else to do. Like you have to just remember that like that is like almost like the death for their role right now. And so like they're going to come in and be like, I need 20 more events. I need, another webinar. I need something going on. And they don't realize like all the other things you have going on. So it is like understanding where they're coming from and being like where you can help, like coming in and being like, hey, I can't do this right now, but maybe we can do this. Maybe we can tweak, this lead gen campaign. This one worked really well, in this region. Let's tweak it and, put a little bit more money towards that for you. But also I've gotten ideas where they're just outlandish, sales will always want more. And it's just like, okay, you have to kind of show them like all the different things that you're doing, all the different ways that touch, their regions or their area that they might not be privy to. I mean, I'm in charge of global growth. So I have lots of like people in EMEA and APAC and like Italy and France and Germany all want like the exact same level of, resources. And sometimes they think if I'm not running like a webinar in Italian, they're like, you're not doing anything for Italy. But I'm like, well, actually, you're getting like, 30% of our leads from our, global webinar are from Italy. So like we are doing it. Just because it's not bespoke to your region or just directed right to you doesn't mean it doesn't, impact and help your stuff. So sometimes it's just a lot of like explaining and communicating, but also just making sure you kind of understand and are empathetic to, sales is a hard job. So I could not do it. And so like I do respect that, it's tough to kind of be out there grinding and I want to be helpful, but just knowing where to be helpful and where you have to kind of draw a line.
In your world, in the world of cybersecurity, a lot of times product innovation is driven by needing to respond to new cyber attacks and new risks that kind of emerge, right? And I imagine your team is constantly working to always kind of stay ahead of the curve. And with that being said, you touched on kind of the longer nature of the sales cycles, and that's definitely the case for most enterprise software. But just curious, like as a team, as a global team, like how do you all stay in lockstep or try your best to when it comes to making sure that the messaging that you're using to sell touches on what current risks are, but also has a nose for like what's around the bend, right? And how are you constantly working to kind of keep things dynamic and fluid?
Yeah, I mean, we're fortunate enough that we have a great group of threat researchers. That's their whole job, is just to kind of like be out there seeing what's going on in the, the industry, identifying threats before they've even been made public and researching publications about that. And they work really, really closely with my director of content marketing. And that's been instrumental, just kind of having her come in from like a content marketing lens and kind of see like, hey, here's all these threats. Here's how we can kind of, put that to market. We're actually doing scary stories right now on our LinkedIn for, Halloween, October. And it's like threat scary stories that our threat team has done. And just like a fun way to kind of, show some of the research that they're doing. But on top of that, we also have, threat researchers that's their whole job. We have it's called an MDDR team, and they literally are just following, the companies that our customers, and they're tracking like the hacks or things that are happening. So there was Scattered Spider was a recent really big hack in EMEA, and it kind of rolled over into North America too. And like our team was able to take learnings off of like what was happening in, certain, companies that it was happening to that was made public, make sure we put in, all of those kind of fixes and recommendations of how to kind of combat it. And then we also use that in our marketing. So like, even regardless if you're not a customer, like you can come to Varonis, and if there's a, recent threat hack, we can show you like, here's the recommended steps to take to kind of protect your data, or what to look out for to see if you're being hit by this kind of threat. So we're very fortunate. Like, we have a really strong like threat research engineers and team and cybersecurity professionals on our team that really keep us like front and center. It's like part of our core offering to our customers, but also we utilize a lot of that in our marketing. And now like that's kind of evolved into our thought leadership strategy as well.
You touched on some of this with, even robots fighting robots, but what are you seeing as some of the biggest challenges and also opportunities for cybersecurity companies right now? And how are you really thinking about approaching those or capitalizing on those opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, the cybersecurity industry in general is very crowded and very noisy, and it's always evolving. Personally, I think right now, like data security is kind of a hot emerging, trend or topic. And so like it's fun to kind of be in that spot where we're kind of the leader and can own the voice of like where data security is going while people are kind of coming in to being like, I need a data security platform. But the challenge is there's so many startups coming in, especially with AI, there's so many startups and you can come in on different sizes. So there could be a startup that just only focuses on this one in particular part of data security where, we're a platform and we do multiple things. So people might come in and think like, I just need this. So I'm just going to purchase this. Or they might do 3 parts of, the data security that we do. So there's just like a lot of competition and it's coming from all different angles. So that's probably the biggest challenge where you never know when a new kind of competitor or thing that you never really thought about kind of pops up. But also just standing out in the market. It's super noisy. Everyone starts to sound the same. Everybody kind of starts to look the same. We did a rebrand last year in particular for this because we were just like, we want to just make sure we're kind of standing out. We're looking super modern and sleek. We're not doing the same kind of like, look and feel. We wanted people to really see us at a trade show. So I think like, the more cybersecurity companies can kind of stand out in the marketplace, whether that's through like really great content, really buzzy kind of marketing things, like ways to just kind of catch attention, I think will be better. Because right now, like a lot of companies kind of all sound and look the same. Like I said, I was going into the conference and everybody was AI something. And I think everything was like purple. 90% of it was purple. So it's just like, how can you stand out and, really kind of impact the market? And like cybersecurity company Wiz, everyone knows, the success story of Wiz. They just did a great job of like thinking differently, playing to, really understanding the CISOs. Like they stood out and everybody, even if you didn't know what Wiz was, you'd go into the conference and you'd be like, oh, that's a really cool booth. So I think that's like the biggest challenge for any cybersecurity marketing team.
And when you look ahead 2 or 3 years, what's your biggest hypothesis about how security buyers are going to choose the right vendors and partners? And what advice would you give to a new growth leader working in that space?
Yeah, that's a great question. I really think from a marketing standpoint, it is going to be about those like authentic connections still because of AI, creating a lot of trash. So I really think like we're going to see a resurgence in outbound. I think direct mail, I think in-person exclusive meetings are going to really kind of like come back. We're going to kind of probably shift away from maybe that like inbound HubSpot model that most of us probably all grew up with. And looking at more of like how can we have personalized touch points with people that feel human. I also think the thought leadership piece is a strong aspect. There's a lot of awards and, like there's the wave and there's some sort of like there's, other bullet points and things where you're at, or there's, the analysts that are like saying like, oh, here's our ranking of cybersecurity companies and stuff. I think there might be a shift where they're privy to the fact that there's a lot of pay to play in that kind of realm, and I think people are going to be, aware of that. And there's going to be a little bit more, I guess, shift in like people are going to trust the thought leaders. So they're going to trust like those kind of, there's a whole bunch of kind of like influencers who are thought leaders in the cybersecurity space that I think they're either doing like podcasts, they're doing their own kind of like blogs, Substacks, analysts, discussions on the market. I think there's going to be a shift where people are going to be looking at them to make decisions on what cybersecurity, software to purchase versus like, oh, you got into the Gartner like 20 list or whatever, like that's who I have to go to, just because I think people are going to realize like you pay for that. Even though you pay for this, you pay for the thought leadership. But I think like that authentic human element is going to just really help companies in general stand out.
I love that. Hope for humanity.
Yeah, exactly. You have to like prove you're human again, and we're all going to have to be in person again. No more just 20 million nurture sequence emails to convert a lead into a deal.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking about this a lot, like just over the last couple of months, how like um marketing and sales have gotten a lot harder just in the last like 3 years for B2B SaaS and cybersecurity, I imagine as well. And on one hand, you could say like, oh man, like everything's gone to crap. And the industry's never going to be the same again. And, or you can have the perspective that like things are probably now just as hard as they've been, just as hard as they are like everywhere else. Like every other company that does marketing and sales, like if you have friends that are like in wealth management or real estate, like they're not just like writing a blog post and then, making sure that that's being syndicated to various outlets and then being served up via newsletter. And they're not going on LinkedIn and just doing a post and creating this like little mini funnel. It's I think a lot of ways like we're having to, just because of how things have shifted around, like we're having to learn how to do this work, like or relearn how to do this work again. And for the first time, I think for a lot of people, it's kind of scary, but I think in a lot of ways it's good because it's forcing us like out of our comfort zones and it's helping us to be less passive.
Yeah, I agree. I think like for me, it's exciting because I think, you can come in and you kind of do something different. There's an opportunity to kind of really stand out as a marketer, try something new. I think there's going to be a lot more room for experimentation. Probably the one blocker, I've talked about this a few times, is just that there's been a really big push around like data-driven marketing decisions. And the further, like, as this kind of evolves, I think there's going to be less ways to attribute directly, some of the marketing stuff. You're going to have to kind of go off intuition a little bit. And I think that's going to be the biggest blocker for getting marketers to be able to kind of make this shift. That's, I feel is happening. You guys are probably feeling that's happening, where it's like, you kind of have to trust us that, some of this stuff, even though you're not going to get the landing page URL tracking code that says this lead came from right here, and that's how that campaign's working. That's probably going to be the hardest thing for marketers to kind of shift in terms of like their boss or the C-suite and like why they're doing, certain things. But ultimately, like, I mean, that's why I like growth marketing, because it's always changing and evolving. It's never the same. And so for me, I see it and I'm like, oh, that's super exciting. Like you can come in, do something new, try some new tactic. You're not just, doing the HubSpot model of inbound, email retargeting funnel. The funnel's changed and it could be exciting for the right marketer. So I think it'll be a really interesting like couple of years, especially with AI. And we'll see completely different marketing strategies emerge.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, Nicole, we're about at time. This has been awesome. For those that want to learn more about you and maybe connect with you, where's the best place for them to find you online?
Yeah, just find me on LinkedIn, / Nicole Gates, pretty simple. I also have a Substack. It's linked in my LinkedIn. It's called Pipeline and Perspective. I just kind of do a lot of this rambling my thoughts. So if you thought any of this was interesting, you can check out my Substack. But yeah, ultimately just connect with me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nicole.
All right. Thank you guys.